Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. Firstly, if you're new here, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. It's been a while since I've done just a sit down talking video because my schedule's been quite busy. Just a bit of a rundown. Last week I was in London for the press conference between Derek Chisora and Deontay Wilder. Press conference just about to start. Apparently KSI is going to be here, which if I get an interview with him, that'd be quite cool. That was mental. And then was at the Pat Brown Ducal fight, which was pretty good. A lot of close fights that maybe shouldn't have been as close as they were. And then now we're looking ahead to a very big upcoming couple of weeks in the sport of boxing because there's a lot of big main events. But just a bit of rundown from last week. I mean, Pat Brown gets that victory over Dukai. I mean, Dukai is the sort of opponent who's proven to be quite durable. I think he's been in with the likes of Chris Smith and has given them a really good run for their money. He's very good at British level, I think. But yeah, Pat Brown was, I guess, too good and in a sense just broke him down. I think he was down. Ducal was down twice before the ref waved it off, which I thought was a bit premature. I think it kind of disrespected Ducal a little bit because he deserved at least to hear the end of the bell. He wasn't hurt, but I guess he wasn't winning the fight. But talking about winning the fight, all one punch is all that is needed, and the fight between William Crawler and Gwyn, that was something spectacular because William Crawler was in a whole heap of trouble. He was down 3 times in the second round. He was hurt. I thought his ankle went at one point, but he dug in there. I do think that night was a bad display of refereeing, because you had the referee for William Crawler. He was down 3 times, and normally, in certain situations, I think if you're down 3 times, it's an automatic. The fight gets called off automatically. That wasn't the case this time round. But I mean, if the fight was called off, I don't think anyone could have any arguments because, as I said, he was in a whole heap of trouble. I guess he just left himself quite open, and yeah. But all one punch is all that is needed, and he delivered that punch in the 7th or 8th round. I was ringside watching it, and yeah, the way in which Gwyn went down, it was scary because he just fell to the ground. Crawler really he landed a perfectly timed punch, and he had to be stretchered off, and there was like a 10-15 minute delay, and then the fight on the undercard, Jordan Thompson, how he made cruiserweight, I don't know, but went up to heavyweight. And looked good against Lenny Apero. Just came short, and I guess this was sort of a rebuild fight. I was initially quite surprised that fight was on the prelims. I thought it would at least be on the main card, but it wasn't, and it was a night to forget for Jordan Thompson. Again, that fight could have been stopped early as well, and there's a point in the fight where his opponent was down. He landed a barrage of punches. That fight could have got stopped then, and then Thompson had him down, and you thought that was it, right? He was going to win, but then the ref, and then he got up, and then his opponent just landed a barrage of punches, and the ref as well maybe should have stopped the fight a little bit earlier as well. So overall, poor display of refereeing, and it was quite an opposite way. You had one ref calling it too early, you had other refs letting it go on too long. So I think a lot needs to be done there. Chisora Wilder, just quickly on that. I mean, both 40 years of age or in their early 40s, both men. I've given a lot to the sport of boxing. They've given us memorable moments over the years. Deontay Wilder with his trilogy fight with none other than Tyson Fury. That'll remain etched in the memory of many for years to come because that was incredible theatre and just incredible bravery from both men. And then Derek Chisora, his career was dead and buried in around 2016, suffering that loss. But he's indicative of someone who, if you just work hard and if you can sell yourself, so he can sell himself very well, you'll do all right in this game. And he's gone on to sell himself, and he's gone on to put on some memorable fights. Dillian White, that fight just comes to mind straight away. Um, but I mean, I think it's time for both men to call it quits. again, that I guess that performance was overshadowed by a little bit of um the poor refereeing that was on floor. I mean, you had Chisora's cornerman jumping in, which he could very well have been disqualified. I kind of get why he didn't disqualify him, because that's not really a great way to end. There were a lot of times where Chisora was punched into the back of the head. That went unaccounted for. And yeah, there was a couple of potential knockdowns in there as well. But I guess the right person won, and that's all that matters in the end. Um, but I think both men should call it a day there. And then that leads me on to this week. Tyson Fury, Arsenal Makhmudov. I mean, that fight has come around quite quickly from press conferences. One thing that's been quite disappointing to see is the build up to the fight. So there's not been a lot of build up coming into this fight, especially considering it's on Netflix and a lot of people have Netflix, or a lot of people have access to a Netflix account. And given that that fight, could have been sold in a better way, it's a disappointing it hasn't. Conor Ben Regis Prograis as chief main support. I don't know how you can justify, having paying $15 million to fight Regis Prograis. And I think Prograis came out in an interview and said he's getting nowhere near that. There's no rehydration clause, and it was almost sort of like a take it or leave it situation. And there's been reports that he's sustained a couple of injuries during training, to which he's redacted and said that's not the case. So I mean, but if that is the case, and obviously he's not gonna come out and say he's injured. But if it is the case that he is dealing with injury, and then if he loses on Saturday night and he comes out and says, "Look, I was dealing with this," it's not a good look to be paid $15 million for that. And he's given Prograis, I guess, every disadvantage possible. Granted, Conor Ben is coming down in weight from 160, it's 150-pound catch weight. But Regis Prograis was fighting at, I believe, 140. He was going to make the move up to 147. But I guess, the Ben team wanted 150. And there's no rehydration clause, which he inflicted upon Chris Eubank Jr. But I guess they need every opportunity. And it is prize fighting at the end of the day. I think Conor Ben wins that. I don't think it puts him in better stead, because of all the factors that I just mentioned, right? Because Regis Progress can come out and say, well, there was no rehydration clause, there was no this, no that. I think the undercard is very decent. Justice Hooney is going up against Fraser Clark, and Jimmy TKV against Richard Riakporhe, both very good fights. Heavily dominated by boxer. It's a good fight for Justice Hooney. For Fraser Clark, it's a very difficult fight. I mean, where does Fraser go from here? He's coming off that defeat against Jamie TKV. Who's better, TKV or Justice Hooney? I guess we haven't seen much of Justice Hooney, but they're on par. So this is, and Fraser Clark, I guess it went the distance, but he didn't get the decision. So yeah, very hard fight for him. And Richard Riakporhe is a very good test. He's coming off that good win against Tommy Welsh, who we haven't seen of on the Eubank Ben undercard. Coming up to fight Jamie TKV, who's the British champion. So yeah, it should be a good undercard, and one that I'm very much looking forward to. And what else do I want to talk about? Finally, the Liverpool card, David Morrell against Callum Smith. That fight is not happening because Callum Smith has sustained an injury during training, which means the main event now is Ben Whittaker against Brian Suarez. Now, this guy, Brian Suarez, I've just been watching some highlights on him against Lyndon Arthur. He looked really good against Lyndon Arthur. That fight was for the IBO World title, but Brian Suarez failed to make weight. So I guess they weren't really fighting for the world title. But he put up a good fight against Arthur. He had Lyndon Arthur down. Lyndon Arthur is a very good fighter. He's got a very good jab, I think. Quite tall, rangy, and has a very accurate jab. But Suarez was gaining a lot of success and had him down. Suarez is a shorter fighter, and Arthur eventually got him out of there with a cracking body shot. Yeah, but in terms of, just a quick word on Ben Whittaker before I go. Like, he signed with Matchroom to get the bigger shows, to be put on bigger shows, and I think there was a clause in his contract that said he was going to go and fight in the US.
But my next fight definitely in America. I think March, April.
But that fight will happen. But well, it should happen next. But if he's going to fight, he's got to fight surely bigger men, and David Morelli's game for that. For the Ben Whittaker fight, and Whittaker's had a lot of time, I guess, between the Gavazzi fight and now to really lock in and train. If he wants to take it to that next step, I think for him he should take the fight against David Morrell. I don't think that's going to happen because I guess Morrell is just that little bit too dangerous. He went 12 rounds with David Benavidez. That was a very good fight. Both men left it all in the ring, and then look, he was quite cocky against Imam Katayev. It showed he was open, he was flashy, he was flamboyant, and he got knocked down a couple of times from Katayev. But I think him going up against a David Morrell would have really seen whereabouts he is in a division that is very stacked with a lot of talent. We can see, where he's at. Can he go and get that world level? Because at the moment, there's not enough hard proof or evidence or data to show where he's at because he's just simply not fighting. And I do think Shalom has a point in that you left Boxer to go and fight with Matchroom. The opponents that he's fighting aren't indicative of the opponents he should be fighting, and there's no disrespect there. But yeah, that is a headline fight at the M&S Bank Arena in Liverpool. That holds 11,000 people. It'll be interesting to see if that arena fills, because obviously everyone knows the Callum Smith brothers. They're notorious in Liverpool, and he would have sold a heck of a lot of tickets off the back of that. So, there's a lot of people going there just to watch Smith. There's quite a lot of local people on the card. Let's just hope they can sell the tickets. Otherwise, that will be another show that doesn't gain the traction it needed. And I think Matchroom were banking on that being a good fight with raucous atmosphere. But anyway, we'll leave it there. Thank you so much for watching. And if you've made it this far, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.